Disclaimer: this content is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. It's strange how the quietest nights can hold the loudest secrets. I remember that evening so clearly, the way the house seemed almost too still, the kind of silence where even the smallest sound feels magnified. I had just turned 21, living under the same roof with my mom and my stepdad, and for the most part, life was simple. Or at least, I thought it was. There was nothing unusual about the night, no loud arguments, no tension in the air. But sometimes, the things that change us forever come without warning. I caught myself thinking about how different my stepdad and I had become over the years. When he first married my mom, he was just another figure in the house, someone I kept a polite distance from. But as time passed, small moments started to feel heavier than they should, conversations that lingered too long, looks that felt a little too searching, and a closeness that didn't quite make sense. I tried to brush it off, telling myself I was just imagining it, that maybe I was reading into things too much. But that night proved otherwise. The lights were out, and the house was dark. I wasn't expecting anything unusual to happen. Yet, in the middle of that silence, something shifted. I felt a touch, one that froze me in place. My heart raced so hard I could hear it pounding in my ears. It wasn't just the surprise, it was the fact that I instantly knew it wasn't an accident. In that moment, I had to decide what to do. Should I pull away, call it out, or pretend it didn't happen? 1,000 thoughts ran through my head in seconds, but one thing was certain: nothing would ever feel the same again. This wasn't just about a touch in the dark. It was about everything that had been building between us, the unspoken tension that finally broke the surface. The line that had always felt blurry was now gone completely. And as much as I wanted to convince myself it was wrong, there was also a part of me that couldn't ignore the emotions tangled up inside me. That part scared me more than anything else. I caught him, and I knew I had to react. But the real question was how? Was I going to push him away, confront him, or let myself step into something I knew could never be undone? That single decision would change everything: my relationship with him, with my mom, and with myself. Before I tell you what happened next, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been caught in a moment where your heart and your mind were at war with each other? Where what you felt clashed with what you knew was right? If you have, you'll understand the storm I was in that night. I didn't sleep much that night. Even after the house settled into silence again, my mind kept replaying every little detail, every second of what had happened. It wasn't just the moment itself, it was the weight behind it, the questions it left hanging in the air. I kept asking myself if I had imagined it, if maybe I misunderstood. But deep down, I knew I hadn't. The truth was clear, and the harder I tried to push it away, the more it pulled me in. Morning came, and everything looked ordinary on the surface. My mom was busy in the kitchen, humming softly while preparing breakfast, and my stepdad sat at the table, reading the paper like he always did. The normality of it all made me even more uneasy. How could the world look so unchanged when I felt so completely different inside? I caught myself stealing glances at him, looking for some sign that he remembered what happened. He didn't look nervous, didn't act guilty. If anything, he seemed calm, too calm. Over the next few days, I became hyper-aware of him. Every small thing stood out: the way his eyes lingered a little longer than they should, the way his voice softened when he spoke to me. I started noticing moments I used to ignore: how he would always ask about my day before anyone else, or how he seemed to know when I was upset even before I said a word. Those things used to feel harmless. Now, they felt charged with meaning. It was confusing because part of me wanted to keep my distance, to protect myself and avoid anything that could make the situation worse. But another part of me, one I didn't want to admit, was drawn to him. That feeling made me question myself. Was I wrong for noticing? Was I wrong for feeling something stir inside me? I told myself I was only human, but the guilt kept creeping in anyway. I thought back to when he first came into our lives. I was 20 at the time, already an adult, already independent in my own way. He wasn't the type of man who tried too hard to win me over. Instead, he was patient, steady, the kind of presence that slowly grew on you without you realizing it. My mom always said he was dependable, and she wasn't wrong. He carried himself with a quiet confidence, and maybe that's why it was so easy for me to lean on him, even when I didn't mean to. The more I tried to keep my feelings in check, the more complicated everything became. We would share small conversations in the kitchen, or cross paths in the hallway, and I could feel the tension hanging in the air between us. It wasn't something we spoke about openly, but it was there, undeniable, heavy, and impossible to ignore. One evening, I caught him looking at me when he thought no one else was watching. It wasn't the kind of look you give casually. It was deeper, searching, almost like he was waiting for me to acknowledge it. Our eyes met for just a second, but it felt like everything inside me froze. That silent connection said more than words ever could. I started to wonder if I was imagining the closeness, or if he felt it too. Was this just me battling my own emotions, or was he carrying the same weight I was? The uncertainty kept me awake at night, turning over possibilities in my head, trying to make sense of it all. The truth is, I didn't have answers yet. All I had were questions, and each one pulled me further into a place I wasn't sure I wanted to be. What I didn't know was that the boundaries we once had were fading fast, and the story we were writing, whether intentional or not, was about to change our lives forever. The days that followed felt like I was walking on a tightrope. Everything around me seemed normal, yet I couldn't shake off the heaviness in my chest. Every shared glance, every brush of a shoulder, every small moment suddenly carried meaning I didn't know how to handle. The main conflict wasn't just between him and me, it was inside me. My heart kept whispering one thing, while my mind screamed another. And the scariest part was that I didn't know which voice to listen to. My stepdad had a way of making the simplest moments feel complicated. He would ask me how school or work was going, and even in those casual talks, I could feel the undertone of something unspoken. When he laughed at one of my jokes, it didn't feel like the laughter of a father figure. It felt warmer, more personal, almost like it was meant only for me. I hated that I noticed the difference, but once you notice something like that, you can't unsee it. The conflict deepened because of my mom. She was always kind, always trusting, and she looked at him like he was her safe place. Watching her smile at him across the dinner table made me question myself even more. Was I betraying her by simply feeling this way? Was I reading too much into things because of the tension that had been building since that night in the dark? I wanted to protect her, but I also couldn't deny the pull I felt toward him. There was another layer too, the way my friends talked about relationships. One of my closest friends had once told me, sometimes love doesn't make sense, but that doesn't mean it isn't real. Her words echoed in my head every time I tried to push my emotions away. Maybe what I was feeling wasn't love, but it also wasn't nothing. It was something, and that something had the power to change everything. Late at night, when the house was quiet, I found myself replaying small moments, wondering if he was doing the same. Was he lying awake too, questioning what had happened? Or was I the only one tangled in this storm of emotions? That not knowing made everything worse. One evening, I overheard him on the phone. His voice was low, calm, but I caught pieces of his conversation. He said something about needing to be careful and not letting things slip. I froze in place, listening. Was he talking about work? Or was he talking about me? I couldn't ask him outright, not without exposing myself. But the thought lingered, planting seeds of doubt and curiosity that I couldn't shake off. At the same time, I noticed he started finding reasons to be around me more often. If I was in the living room, he'd wander in with his coffee. If I was outside, he'd come out just to get some fresh air. None of it felt forced, but it also didn't feel accidental. It was like he was quietly testing the space between us, seeing how far the invisible line could stretch before it broke. The real conflict wasn't just the risk of being caught, it was the emotions I didn't want to admit. It was the way my pulse quickened when he entered the room, the way my breath caught when his eyes met mine. I was torn between fear of the consequences and curiosity about where this was leading. The tension between us grew heavier with every passing day, like a secret we were both carrying but never daring to name. Even in crowded rooms, I could feel it, the weight of his eyes on me, the way his presence pulled at me like gravity. I kept telling myself I needed to set boundaries, to push it all aside, but the more I tried, the stronger it became. The conflict wasn't fading, it was building, quietly, steadily, like a storm waiting to break. One night, The air in the house felt different. My mom had gone to visit a friend and wasn't expected back until late, leaving just the two of us at home. I could sense the shift as soon as the door closed behind her. The silence wasn't ordinary anymore. It was charged, like we were both aware of what could happen now that there were no eyes watching us. I sat in the living room, trying to focus on the TV, but my mind was spinning too fast. I kept asking myself what I would do if he walked in, if he sat beside me, if the space between us suddenly disappeared. And then it happened. He came into the room slowly, almost cautiously, like he was testing the waters. He didn't say much, just asked if I was okay, his voice lower than usual. My heart raced, my palms felt damp, and for a moment, I couldn't even form words. It was like all the weeks of silence and stolen glances had led us here, to this exact moment. The intensity of it scared me. Every second stretched out longer than it should have, and I kept waiting for something, anything, to break the silence. His eyes met mine, holding me there, searching for an answer I wasn't sure I was ready to give. I wanted to move, to speak, to end the tension, but my body refused to listen. That's when I realized how close we had come to crossing a line we couldn't return from. Everything hung in the balance, the trust of my mom, the stability of our home, the fragile boundary between us. One wrong move and it would all collapse. But at the same time, the possibility of stepping forward pulled at me just as strongly. The suspense was unbearable. I didn't know if I should run from the room, if I should confront him, or if I should let the moment unfold. The choices pressed in on me like walls closing in, and I knew whatever happened next would define everything. Just when the silence in that room felt like it was going to break apart, something unexpected happened that neither of us saw coming. The front door rattled, and I froze. My mom wasn't supposed to be back for hours, but there she was, calling out from the hallway like nothing had changed. The sound of her voice cut through the air, snapping the tension in half. My stepdad and I exchanged a quick glance, sharp, uneasy, filled with unspoken panic, and in an instant, the atmosphere shifted. We both moved back into the safety of normalcy, pretending as if the last few moments had never existed. But even as she walked into the living room smiling, chatting about her night, I could feel my pulse still racing. The close call left me shaken, not just because we almost got caught, but because I realized how close we had come to something irreversible. That interruption didn't erase what had been building between us, it only made it more dangerous. In the days that followed, I thought maybe things would cool down, that the scare of almost being discovered would push us back to safer ground. Instead, it had the opposite effect. The looks he gave me grew bolder, longer. And strangely enough, I found myself no longer avoiding them. The suspense in our story was only intensifying, but now there was a new layer, paranoia. One afternoon, I overheard my mom on the phone with one of her friends. She laughed and said, "Sometimes I think he pays more attention to her than to me." My stomach dropped. It was said casually, like a joke, but it hit me like a warning. If she was starting to notice even the smallest shifts, how long would it be before the truth came crashing out into the open? That conversation planted seeds of fear I couldn't ignore. Every interaction with him suddenly felt like a risk. Every word, every glance had to be measured, hidden, disguised. But even while the danger grew, the pull between us grew stronger too. I hated to admit it, but the fear made the tension feel even sharper, almost intoxicating. It was like we were balancing on the edge of something bigger than either of us could control. Then came the second twist. One evening, I found something I wasn't supposed to see. My stepdad had left his phone on the counter, and a message lit up the screen. It was from someone I didn't recognize. The words were simple: "We can't keep doing this. Someone is going to find out." My chest tightened as I stared at the message, questions swirling faster than I could catch them. Who is this person? What couldn't they keep doing? And most of all, was he hiding another secret, one that had nothing to do with me? That discovery flipped everything upside down. Suddenly, I wasn't sure if I was the only one caught in this hidden story, or if I was just another piece of a puzzle I didn't understand yet. The idea that he might be entangled with someone else made me feel a strange mix of relief and jealousy. Relief, because maybe what I was feeling wasn't as real as I thought. Jealousy, because the thought of him sharing that same intensity with another woman burned in a way I couldn't explain. The stakes were higher now. Not only were we hiding something fragile and forbidden, but there was another secret lurking in the shadows, waiting to unravel everything. If my mom found out, it wouldn't just destroy her trust, it would tear our family apart. And if this other secret came to light, I wasn't sure if I could handle the truth. The message I saw on his phone haunted me for days. Every time I looked at him, I wondered if he was keeping something from me, something bigger than what had been happening in the shadows between us. The unanswered question burned inside me, and finally, one night, I couldn't hold it in any longer. We were alone in the kitchen, the house quiet, and I asked him directly who that message was from. For a moment, he froze, his face shifting through emotions he tried to hide. Then he sighed, like a man who had been carrying too much for too long. "It's not what you think," he said quietly, his voice low, almost pleading. He explained that before he married my mom, he had been involved with someone else, and that person hadn't fully let go. The message wasn't about me, he swore. It was about his past trying to claw its way back. I wanted to believe him, but the doubt had already crept too deep. Still, hearing his confession out loud was enough to shatter the tension we'd been balancing on for weeks. The unspoken attraction between us could no longer hide behind silence. That was the breaking point, the climax of everything that had been building. He admitted he had felt the same pull toward me, that the closeness wasn't just in my head. Hearing those words was both terrifying and strangely relieving. The truth was out in the open now, raw and dangerous. The line we had been dancing on was gone completely. For a few breathless moments, it felt like the world had narrowed down to just the two of us, our emotions crashing together like a storm finally breaking. But then, the final twist came. As if fate had been waiting for the perfect moment, my mom walked in unexpectedly, her face pale and shocked as she caught us mid-conversation, our closeness impossible to disguise. The silence that followed was heavier than anything before. The look in her eyes told me she had pieced together more than we ever wanted her to know. In that instant, everything changed. The conflict wasn't just between me and him anymore. It was laid bare in front of her, the person who trusted us most. The suspense that had been brewing for so long reached its peak, not in whispered glances or hidden touches, but in the raw reality of being caught in the open. The story ended not with the comfort of resolution, but with the sting of consequence. Because sometimes, when secrets rise to the surface, they don't just resolve, they explode, leaving everyone to pick up the pieces. The silence after my mom walked in felt endless. Her eyes moved between us, and I could see the pieces falling into place in her mind. My chest tightened, and for the first time, I truly understood the weight of what we had been carrying. It wasn't just about attraction or unspoken feelings anymore, it was about the damage that had been done, the trust that was shattered in that single instant. That night, no one raised their voice. There were no screaming matches, no broken plates. Instead, there was a quiet, heavy grief that settled over the house. My stepdad admitted everything, not the physical part, but the emotions, the closeness that had crossed boundaries it never should have. I could see the heartbreak in my mom's face, and it cut deeper than anything I had ever felt. She didn't deserve this. In the weeks that followed, the house became a place of distance. My stepdad tried to repair what had been broken, assuring my mom that nothing physical had happened, that the mistake was in letting things go too far emotionally. I stayed silent most of the time, ashamed and unsure of how to make amends. The tension that had once felt like a secret pull now became a barrier, something that divided us all. Eventually, my mom made her choice. She didn't leave him immediately, but things were never the same. Trust, once broken, doesn't return so easily. I moved out soon after, knowing that space was the only way forward. It was painful, but necessary. The closeness that had once felt intoxicating now felt like poison, something that had taken more from us than it ever gave. Looking back, the story wasn't about romance at all. It was about boundaries, choices, and the cost of letting emotions lead where they don't belong. The conflict that once lived in silence eventually exploded into truth, and the truth left scars none of us could ignore. Sometimes, The hardest lesson to learn is that not every connection is meant to be followed. Some are there to test us, to show us the lines we should never cross, no matter how strong the pull may feel. And maybe that was the real ending of it all, a reminder that desire can be powerful, but consequences are always stronger. So now I want to ask you, how do you feel about the way this story ended? Do you think forgiveness is possible, or are some mistakes too heavy to move past? Let me know in the comments, and tell me if you'd like to see a sequel where the aftermath unfolds. Your thoughts always mean more than you know. Summary: a young woman finds herself entangled in an emotional conflict with her stepdad, a tension that grows in silence until it reaches a breaking point. When their secret is exposed, the family is forced to face painful truths about trust, boundaries, and relationships. What begins as suspenseful attraction ends as a powerful lesson on consequences and the fragile nature of love. 5.